Yo, no, don't start with a yo, Van. It's been a while. Welcome to our channel, where we bring the magic of art to life, or any nonsense like that. My name is Van SoulL, yes, with 2 L's. Today we are diving into creating this artwork step by step. But before, give some love by liking, commenting and subscribing to the channel. Let's go. Where am I supposed to go? Now, before we start, this video is part of my Patreon video tutorials. The original dropped a month ago and it was a 1-hour masterpiece. If you are keen on checking that out, you can find the link below. Let's start. For this artwork, we will need a mix of brushes displayed on the screen, including some stock Procreate brushes and others from Devins, which you can download for free from the link below. By the way, feel free to follow along with any art program and use your own brushes too. Now onto the fun part. Grab the soft round brush and some blue tones to paint the background sky. Don't forget to add the shadow gradient for that extra touch of variation. Next, using the clouds brush in circular motions, start adding those fluffy clouds on top. Don't stress too much about the details because they are mostly be covered by our foreground later on. Add some variations with a secondary color and introduce a hint of shadow. I highly recommend using references for this step, since it can be tricky to decide where to place those shadows. Now onto a fresh layer. I like to import my tree reference, often snagged from a Studio Ghibli movie. Using the block-in brush, I kick things off with the darkest green hue, painting the basic silhouette of the tree from top to the bottom. Does this technique ring a bell? It might remind you of the childhood days when we would sketch trees using this technique. Then I switch over to the trunk texture brush, sticking with the same color, but adding some delightful variations to our tree. It's all about those subtle touches. Remember, mastering variations in your artworks can truly elevate your craft and give it that professional polish. So keep tweaking those edges. Now onto a new clay mask layer. Switch to a lighter green hue and grab the 3-dimension brush, which offers a softer touch. I start by painting partially within the tree shape, mainly focusing on the top of the branches. Then I switch to a firmer brush and repeat the process to introduce those delightful variations we talked about. And here's a tip. Make sure to leave some of the bottom parts of the tree untouched to mimic those natural shadows. Repeat the process with even slightly lighter and more saturated color to add additional details. Be mindful though to keep these details on top of the branches and avoid going overboard. These steps are what going to make or break our trees, so take your time and don't hesitate to use references. By the way, everyone who claims they don't use references is lying. Sue me. Anyway, moving on. Finally, using the tree detail brush and the lightest green color, add in the last layer of details on top of everything. You can also add a tree trunk using the oriental brush if you fancy, though it's not necessary. After finishing our first tree, I like to use the warping tool to tweak its shape if needed. But before diving into that, I always make sure to duplicate my tree, and you will see why later on. Now, let's repeat the entire process for the second tree. These two trees are the key elements of our artwork, which is why we go through the process again instead of just copying and pasting the first tree. And I almost forgot about the faraway trees. While they might not be as prominent, they will certainly add some depth to the overall piece. Now, remember that tree we duplicated earlier? We are going to use it to fill the rest of the canvas. How? I hear you ask. Duplicate it as many times as needed until we have created a full forest. Here's the trick. Play around with the shape and size of each duplicated tree to add variation. I often use the warp tool and my brushes to tweak individual branches of each tree. And don't forget to adjust the vibrancy, color and saturation of each tree too. Trees in the distance should have slightly bluer tone, be less saturated and be a bit smaller in size. And the trees in the foreground should be larger, darker and have more vibrant green color. Finally, let's shift our focus to the main element of the artwork, the rock in the middle. Just like with the trees, references are crucial here. While I'm using my own artwork as reference, you can easily find rock references all over the place. In fact, I have one here. When painting rocks, I like to begin by sketching out the cracks and the main shapes to get a sense of how the rocks is forming. For this, I use a smaller version of the clouds brush that I used for the clouds. I simply duplicated it and renamed it for easy access. Then I start adding in the shadows and highlighted sections based on my reference, using the same brush but tilting it slightly and applying light pressure. Additionally, some of the rock edges tend to be lighter than what I initially painted, so I make sure to add highlights in those areas as well. I continue adding details such as scratches, cracks, shadows, and perhaps even introducing some subtle colors until our rock is complete. And I almost forgot. Silly one, let's add some grass on top of the rock to seamlessly blend it with the trees we painted. For this, I'll be using brushes from Devins Brushes. I like to mix it up with 3 or 4 different brushes to achieve a more natural look. You can find all the brushes I use in the bottom left corner of the screen. And now that we have completed the full background, we are ready to introduce our character. But hey, that's a theme for another video. And that's a wrap for today, folks. So, what did we learn today? That variation is key, and that I don't have a microphone. Keep on creating. Huge thanks to all my Patreons who support me. And if you are interested on supporting my journey too, be sure to follow me on all social media, links below, or consider joining my Patreon for as little as $2 a month. See you!